Okay, so as we're getting to know each other, we are going to I'll go through our agenda. But before we do that, I do want to do some other welcomes and introductions as well. My name is Jelaine. I am the current chair for the scholarship committee for GPCI, and I'm fortunate to be on the GPCI board as well. And I have with me today some wonderful colleagues, including so my name here, and then I'm going to have her start by introducing herself as well. Tammy Tilsey, who is our wonderful consultant who works with us on a lot of different things for GPCI. So I'm going to have her share a little bit about herself and welcome you. And then I have one of our other board members, Kathy's here, and Diane Demaris, who's one of our wonderful volunteers. So for Kathy and Diane, who are GPCs as well, I'm also going to have them share their GPC story. So I'm going to turn it over to Tammy and then Kathy and Diane.
Hello, thank you for being here. I've enjoyed serving on the board as a public member as well as helping with the marketing committee during that time, and now continuing on working with the marketing and scholarships and fundraising and all other committees with GPCI. So I'm excited about this year's scholarship cycle and so glad that so many people have joined us today. I am not a grant writer, but support the grant profession and help those who work in sell services, training, or software in the grant world do their marketing. So that is me. And now I'll pass it off to Diane.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many people here. My name is Diane Demarest, and I've been a grant professional for full-time, working on grants probably for the last 15 years. But I have written grants for a very long time in many other roles, as probably many of you have. And I'm currently working part-time for a public health district. I'm writing grants for that. And Kathy, I think, is up next.
Hi, welcome. I'm Kathy Hatfield. I'm a GPC and on the GPCI board I think I'm in my 5th year of my term. I began working on grants over 30 years ago now. I was running a program for battered women and children, and we needed things. And so I worked for nonprofits for a number of years, and for the last 10 years, I've been a consultant. I'm based in Central Ohio, and I'm glad to see everybody here today. And I guess I'm going to pass it back to Jelaine.
So I'm going to ask Kathy and Diane also just to share briefly why you pursued the GPC. And I'll actually start first. I am in higher education, and it actually was something that my supervisor at the time encouraged me to seek out. And for me in higher education, it's really helped because of some credibility. And when you're working with most people that have a terminal degree and sort of have achieved everything in their discipline, it's really helpful to also have this credential. And we are as well the first grant professional certification that is accredited. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But now I'll call back on Kathy and Diane just to share why they sought the GPC.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, I'll start. Well, as I mentioned, I started doing this a really long time ago, back in the Stone Ages, before it was actually being a grant professional was a thing. I was the only person I knew doing the work that I was doing once I started doing it. And I heard about the GPC through my membership in GPA, so my colleagues there, not that long ago, probably about 15 years ago. And once I heard about it, for me, on a personal level, it was about claiming my profession that wasn't really a profession when I started doing it. And I also think that on a more macro level, it elevates all of us and it gives credibility to the grants field. anybody can put, you know, put a website out there and say they're a grant professional, but I feel like having my GPC makes me stand apart, especially as a consultant. But even when I was working for the nonprofit, and my nonprofit agreed. I mean, they paid for my exam back in the day, which was about, I guess, 7 years, it must have been 9 years ago because I'm in the process of doing my CMP this year, like many of you. So, all right, with all of that said, Diane, how about you?
My story is a little bit different. Actually, I've only been a GPC for 2 years, but I've been a grant professional for a long time. I think for me, I sort of was on the fence for quite a while, deciding whether or not it was going to be useful professionally, if it's something I really should do. And I think for me, it was sort of a personal test, a personal goal to affirm my body of knowledge, I think, and my experience. And that was really, really um, uh, came as a wonderful, affirmation at this point in my career. I was in the process of moving from one nonprofit full-time job to my current position, and my former position, they would not help pay for it at all. But they didn't really understand the value of it, and so I felt like I didn't do a good enough job educating them. And when I came to my new position in public health, I've talked about it more, and I've found that, like Kathy said, I think, and Jelaine, it's about credibility. And when, for instance, some of the folks here might say something like, "Well, we can help you write a grant," and then traditionally grant writers take a piece of it. I have to kind of say, well, that's really not the way we do things. So, but I feel like I can speak from a position of some authority to convey the ethics of GPCI and the values that we share, because I've gone through that process.
Great. Thank you both so much for sharing. And we will also, I do want to mention, I was thrilled Diane could join us today because she is someone who was in your shoes a couple years ago. So she actually received a scholarship for the exam. So we're going to hear from her on some of the tips a little bit later. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about where the funds come from. Then we'll talk about the exam scholarship. And then once you receive the GPC, there's a renewal process. We call that the CMP, and we do have scholarships for that as well. We will talk about tips to submit a competitive application, timeline, Q&A, and then also we'll touch on some different ways of study groups as well. And then thank you for everyone who submitted your questions ahead of time. I'm hoping to track those as we go along and make sure that we address those questions. During the question and answer, though, please do, we'll unmute and have you ask those questions or put them in the chat as well. Throughout our presentation, Kathy will be helping us by putting links into the chat as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to share a little bit about where the funding comes from.
Okay. Well, funding comes from a number of different places. We have individuals that contribute, grant professionals and other donors. Some of those individuals give any amount, it can give any amount of money, going through the Grant Professionals Foundation, GPF website. Other individuals give, and they have a named scholarship for somebody in their life or somebody they're trying to remember or something like that. And those, like I said, are they can be for both CMPs, renewals for the credential, or for the exams. Businesses sometimes also contribute a scholarship. The Grants Professional Foundation, some of their fundraising goes towards a portion of scholarships. For example, last year they raised and provided GPCI with funding for 2 scholarships through their fundraising efforts last year. And then GPCI also raises money. Contributions go through the through GPF, And we GPCI, between our donors and what we were able to raise last year, we did 12 scholarships last year. And then individual chapters with GPA or other regional networking groups also offer scholarships at times. Some of them go through GPCI, and we will be awarding those through this process. I know of some GPA chapters that manage their own scholarship process. For example, I'm in the Central Ohio GPA chapter, and we do our own process. So you may want to, if you are a member of GPA or another networking grant professional group, you may want to ask if they offer their own scholarships through their own process. Sometimes I think that isn't well known.
Thank you, Kathy. That is very true. And so we try to, as much as possible, get them into the same process. So it's a one place to apply. However, the donor, I come from a fundraising background, so the donor is always correct. So some of them want to do those scholarships in a different manner. We also mentioned the regional chapters because that is why we're going to ask you a question on the application related to sort of where different associations you might be a part of, or if you're where you're located. That does not in any way, it's not scored in the application itself. It's really to help us with making sure we're matching. And I will say as well that we have many regional scholarships from chapters that we're not always able to award. So please do share with your colleagues and ask at your chapter level as well, because we all want to help everyone who's qualified to sit for the exam itself. So we are going to talk, and I should mention as well, we're going to talk about the application. This presentation is really geared towards people who have an understanding of the GPCI exam. However, on April 15th, if you're not as familiar with GPC or the exam, on April 15th, we're celebrating Tax Day by having a fireside that will share more details on that. And we do also have recordings as well for you. Okay, so the application itself. So we do an online application, and we are fortunate to partner with GPA, and they help us with that process through Zoom grants. So the link to apply is here, and we will put that in in the chat as well. The application itself is going to go live on April 1st. And if it's not right now something that you can at least see, we will ask that they make that possible for us. But this is going to be the link that you use. There are 14 questions. We are going to include the demographic questions, and that is, as I mentioned, optional. So that, again, is really to help us to match you with the donors if there's a donor that is in your area or region or in a membership that you belong to. So those are optional to answer as well, but they do help us to do some matching for that. They are not scored. They're not something that our reviewers will see at all. So we're going to ask you your basic information, those questions, and then your scored questions, which are going to be really what is going to be there. You would be evaluated on those questions, just like we are with any other grant proposal we submit. We do include our scoring rubric, and I do want to share as well that these the questions are going to be evaluated by peers in the field. They are scholarship reviewers who are current GPCs. They have the rubric and they follow that, and then multiple people are reviewing each of the applications as well. So I'm going to switch to the first part is knowing whether or not you're actually eligible to sit for the exam. So before you submit an application, and this is again the exam itself, if you are not yet a GPC, we want you to first check to make sure that you're eligible to sit for the exam. And we will also talk about timeline as well as to when you would need to be able to take the exam this year, basically. So the quiz itself, determining about if you're eligible, is linked here, and we'll put that in the chat as well. So we want to make sure that you have met our qualifications. We have a couple different pathways to qualify for the exam as well. And those are in both our eligibility section of our website, but also in the quiz. And so once I'll stay on this one and then I'll turn it over to, or I'll talk a little bit about the CMP. But if you aren't sure if you're eligible to submit the exam or to sit for the exam, you can also reach out to us and we can have you talk to our eligibility chair as well. It is really important timing wise to make sure that it is something that you're eligible for and you can sit for, so that once it's awarded, you're able to take that exam no later than the end of this year, December 31st. For those of us who are current GPCs, we have the renewal process. Kathy referenced it. I just went through it last year as well. And so we have a renewal every 3 years to maintain your GPC. And we do have, for the scholarship, it would help cover the cost of that renewal. And the application as well for the CMP, we have all the materials there, so you will know if you're in your cohort for your CMP renewal. We are going to, again, this is this year's scholarship. We only do scholarships once a year. And so if your renewal cohorts include September of this year and December, or March or June of 2027, we do quarterly cohorts. This is your year to apply for the scholarship as well. We have some donors who really want to do the renewals. And so last year we actually were not able to give away all of our CMP scholarships. So if this is your time period in September to June that you're up for renewal, please do apply so that you can be in that pool. And again, the same thing, we have a scoring rubric included. Demographic questions are optional because as well, some of your some chapters or regions want to give those renewals to their members or people in their area. Those are not going to be actually a part of the rubric. And then the meat of it, the scored questions, are included with the rubric provided. As you go into the application, you will choose which of those you're going to be. If you're looking at the exam or the CMP, for our current GPCs that are doing the CMP renewal, you'll ignore some of the other questions that are provided. So I'll talk a little bit about some tips for competitive application, and then Diane's going to share some actual perspective from having successfully completed our scholarship. So these are the same kind of tips. They're the same standards we use in our industry, but just make sure you're editing for grammar and punctuation, readability. Again, these are your peers that are going to be assessing this. Make sure you're reading it again. It is in Zoom Grants, and I think many of us have used that before. I still am old school. I like to keep things in a Word document and then just copy paste into the application itself. But again, whatever works best for you. Making sure that all the answers all the questions have an answer for it. Making sure those are complete answers and reviewing your application before submitting. I think in some ways it's harder for us to do these type of applications, which are about ourselves and our profession and the success that we've had. But really approach this as you do any of your competitive applications for grants or contracts as well. Make sure you're thinking through it, reviewing it before submission. And then the other part is explaining why you are asking for the scholarship. So we want to know both your involvement in the grants field and the grants profession, but also why you need the scholarship. One of the questions that had come in was related to hardship. We are not going to ask you, we don't need any financial things or anything like that, but this is the part of the scholarship where we're going to ask you why you need that. This is where you can talk about, and again, everyone who reviews these, it's all confidential. We all have signed documents ensuring that the confidentiality is remains in place. So be as honest as you feel comfortable sharing your current situation. And I will say, we all know that our field has had some challenges over the last couple of years. So be very honest about what that means for you as a grant professional, whether it's your organization that doesn't have the resources now, but is supportive, or if you're a personal consultant yourself or a contractor, just tell us why you need the scholarship. And because the people reviewing it, as we all review proposals probably as well, they want to know more about you as a person and want to make sure that we have the best picture of you, both your talents and your needs as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane just to share a little bit of her personal perspective, having gone through this process a couple of years ago.
Well, thanks, Jelaine. I guess I would first just say that I was one of the founding members of our chapter, and we've had scholarships in place for a fair number of years for both memberships and for the GPC. And as our liaison, our representative to GPCI, Tammy has always been really encouraging of folks to get their GPC. We've got amazing, talented folks in our chapter who've been grant professionals for a long time. And so one of my motivations too is being sort of a good example of thinking, gosh, I'm really active in our chapter, I should get my GPC. So that was another motivating factor. But I would say, I was slightly reluctant when I did apply for a scholarship. I was no longer an officer, but that wouldn't have precluded me from applying. So our chapter did have a scholarship, I think, for half the cost of the GPC exam, which was really helpful. And so don't shy away from applying. I think if it's in your chapter, that's one thing I would just say. I think that the chapter really celebrates with everyone who gets their GPC. And I'm just thrilled that our chapter now, I think we have 4 or 5 at this point who are GPCs. So it's a really great thing. In terms of the scholarship application process, I think that Jelaine made some great analogies here to our grant writing profession. As we submit a grant, I would say that, it is that combination of persuasive writing and sharing your passion for what you do, as well as, accurate information. I think that just like you wouldn't go to a funder saying, well, we need your money or we're going to close. I think that the need, can be that you don't have any other, your employer, for instance, has had nothing available to help you pay for it. But I do think it seems to me at least, it's more important about why and why you want to get your GPC and how important that is to you and what you foresee that doing for you professionally. And also bringing you closer into that community of GPC grant professionals, around the world, but particularly in your region, that we have a common body of knowledge to share, common expertise. And I think expressing some of those ideals that you have is important. I will say you don't get your score back. So I'm not sure exactly what persuaded the committee to award me a scholarship, but I was really, really grateful to have received that scholarship. It does, what's the word here? It kind of glues you on that process of saying, okay, got this scholarship. I'm going to do it with, like Jelaine said, within this period of time. So in some ways, it's an accountability tool as well, where otherwise it might be easy to slip out of doing it. But, I think that we'll talk more later, but there are wonderful opportunities to get ready for it, even if you've been a grant writer for a long time. I still think it's very doable for those with experience. And, I did study groups as well. But the scholarship application was really not difficult at all. But I think being heartfelt is a really important part of it. And you're speaking to your peers. So what better group to explain, how important it is to you than that group. I think that's probably about it, Julie.
Thank you so much, Diane. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to talk about our timeline.
Yes, the timeline has been in place, the same timeline for several years, and we've just gotten better and better at executing things to make it easier for the applicants. So The scholarship cycle is open during the month of April. So the links that you've seen, the link to actually see the application is not available yet, but it will be soon. And so that is the place you would go to actually dig into that application. But I have shared, and Jelaine, I don't know if she noticed this going by, I shared the rubrics from last year, and there are no changes on the scoring weighting or how they're going to be reviewed and scored. So make sure you grab the appropriate one, the GPC exam or the CMP renewal rubric, and start studying. And like Diane said, formulate the questions are there, and what makes a good answer is explained as well. So you could start today, but the application is open April 1st to the 30th. And you need to make sure that you apply and hit submit before the 30th. There's no points gained from earlier or later. If you're unsure about your eligibility, definitely take time to do that and ask and get answers to all your questions for that. And then the application review will occur. We have the scholarship reviewers in place now, and they will review the applications in May with the goal to send out the award letters in early or mid-June. So the awards are announced. If you are awarded a scholarship, you'll get that by that letter in June. And the scholarship awardees then get that award. They make sure you submit your eligibility packet. And again, this is something that there's no reason why you can't fill this out, have it all ready to go. But you need to have the award or pay the remaining amount when you submit your eligibility packet. And you'll have until the end of August to do so. So June, July, August, end of August, make sure you get that in. And then it takes a full month to review those and get back to you on if you are eligible. Again, allow time if you have questions to do the question and answer, because once your eligibility packet is accepted, then you have those 30 days, and you don't want to eat into the time then when your eligibility is confirmed. Then you have to the end of the year to take the exam. So that's the timeline. Making sure you fit into that timeline is important as you apply for scholarships. If it doesn't work for you to take the exam by the end of the year, then you may want to apply next year because the scholarships that will be awarded will be for that timeline. Any other questions that came in while I talked about that?
I don't.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if it's about that, but we've had some questions in the chat about the materials to give to their employers to see if their employers will support them taking the exam. And I know we have that, Tammy. I can't find it on the website, so maybe we can email that to attendees afterwards.
Yes, I'll make sure we put that in the follow-up email.
Thank you.
I did want to note, we had one question that came in earlier that someone, which is very common, right? Someone lives in one area but works for an organization in a different state. And so I think the answer is to just give us as much of that information as you can. And we can go back to our donors as well to find out what their, and that is mostly the chapters if they're looking for people who, however they're looking for that. And I will say too, I know in the past, I'm in a border state. I live in one state, I work in the other. And so I always joined both chapters. So I think on that question, just give us as much information as you can to tell us, I'm in this chapter, I'm also in a regional chapter. I work here, I live here. Give us as much as you can in that little section of demographics so that we can just try to match you for that. It's a really good question because, and something that we'll potentially go back to our donors to ask more from them on their criteria as more and more of us are working remote. And then we had some international questions as well. And this is an international exam with the caveat that a lot of these, it is, you know, most of our GPCs are in the United States, and we do have those in Canada as well. But people internationally are absolutely eligible for, if you're eligible for the exam itself, you would be eligible for our scholarships. There's no limitation on that as well. And then another note that had come in earlier was related to, and Tammy alluded to this, our timeline. We do right now only have one time period to apply for scholarships, which is April. We only do run one round of scholarships. And so it is, that's why sometimes when you go to the scholarship section, it says there's nothing available right now. So we try to push it out and make sure people know April is the time to do that. But that is just a one time that we do it. Other questions? I'm trying to see what else. Oh, we do also have, which we'll touch on the end if we're able to, or we'll share some things on the end, and then we can send that out in our follow-up email, as well as, again, pitching the April fireside coming up. We talk a lot in our firesides about sort of study groups, preparing for the exam. I had a lot of questions that came in for that as well, which is exciting. And we do, again, cover some of those things. Kathy in particular works with all of our ambassadors, and they do some different programming to help people study or prepare for the actual exam itself as well. But other questions that came in that we know right now?
There's a several questions about timing, Jelaine, if you want to talk about that generally, like somebody is eligible in October and they're going to take the exam. Is it okay for them to apply? And do we sign up for the exam after we know if we've got the scholarship? I mean, all that timing kind of stuff.
Yes. So your eligibility packet is going to be due in August of 2026, by the end of August. So if you are not qualified at that time, then we would have you wait and apply for the scholarship next year. So if you're qualified in October, then the answer is you need to wait until the 2027 scholarship process in order to apply for a scholarship, because your eligibility packet has to be able to meet, you have to be able to be by the end of August, that the eligibility team is going to say, yes, you can sit for the exam. So that is one of the challenges of the timeline as we have it. Remind me the second part of the question. Sorry. Register for the exam. Yes. So you're going to, and actually I'll go back to the next steps. This might answer this as well. So again, if you're eligible through that quiz, you're going to apply for the scholarship, attend the April 15th GPCI fireside, and I'll give you the link to that. Once you receive the scholarship in June, you're going to get a payment link to apply for the scholarship, and then you'll go through that payment process. So do not register for the exam or pay for the exam until you find out in June if you have a scholarship. And I should have mentioned when we talked about donors, we do have some partial scholarships as well. I think both Diane and Kathy and Tammy alluded to that. So we will have some partial scholarships, whether it's from a chapter or a donor. And that's also where you can then ask your employer to pay for the remaining part of it, or asking at your chapter level as well, because I think there are some chapters that have resources that they will put towards the rest of the scholarship. We do only have we changed last year. We have one price for the exam. The $629 is for everyone, regardless of any memberships that you have. But again, so do not register for the exam until you hear about the scholarship, because otherwise it's really hard to do any type of reimbursements and things like that. So in June, you receive the scholarship or a partial scholarship, you're going to go ahead and use the payment link that's sent to you in your scholarship letter to apply that and to register for or to pay for the exam with your scholarship. And then you'll complete and submit that packet within 90 days. So I'm going to go back to that one. So again, you're going to get that payment link in June, and then you're going to use your payment link by August to submit for your to register for your eligibility packet, and that's when you'll do that. Please do not pay ahead of time, because then it becomes an issue of trying to reimburse, which is not always easy to do. Did that help answer that? Probably over answered the question.
Yeah, we'll see if they respond back.
Okay.
There's a
Please let me know.
question. There's a question from Judy about what if you're in between jobs, and I don't think that matters. It's more an issue of if you pass the eligibility quiz, then you're good to go.
Correct. Yes, you do. And as to be eligible to sit for the GPC does not mean you have to be currently employed or you have to be active in the grants profession right now, but employment does not necessarily isn't one of those criteria that would preclude you from doing it. So you have to have enough years of experience and years of either paid contract work or employment. But if you're in between jobs right now, that is just fine as far as the eligibility, and frankly, probably a really good thing to tell our scholarship reviewers as well, because that could make the case for why this could be really helpful for you professionally. I am going to, before I forget, I keep talking about the Fireside we do have, and we'll put the registration link in there. The Fireside itself, this one is going to be for anyone considering the exam, and this is where we go through a lot more of their criteria to sit for the exam, as well as the resources to study for it. We do have on our website, we have previous Firesides. We run these every other month, and so we do have previous Firesides from this year that are available for you as well if you're not sure about both the eligibility as well as the study groups and the ways to prepare for the exam itself. And it talks more about the exam.
There's a question, Jelaine, about the support reference letters required and if we have examples of what would be qualified to use.
For the eligibility process.
I think
so. I want to say that the scholarship does not require any letters of support at all for that. But when you're going into for the eligibility packet itself, I actually would need to go back and look to see if we have example letters of those letters of support. I do know we have details on what should be included in the letter of support.
There's sample letters in the eligibility guide. So, and that is something that if you have a question, you could easily send into our eligibility guide share. But there are some samples there.
Yeah, and I'll put the ambassador email back in too. I mean, I wrote my own letters and had my people edit them same way I do for applications when I submit them. And so, I mean, we could share some too. And there's a lot of questions.
Giving that guidance on here's what here's a draft for them. And then I know, Kathy, if there are more questions on this, but I want to make sure before we leave today too, that you do reference a little bit about the ambassador program, because that is such a great resource for people. But go ahead, other questions?
Well, there's a lot of questions about where chapters are, so I just put a link to the Grant Professional Association chapters in the chat because I don't know what areas they cover. So the GPC Ambassador Program, those are volunteers that are in different states and in Canada, and they're individuals that support um, professionals who are looking to get their GPC. So they can answer some questions. Some of them facilitate study groups, they can provide resources and just kind of help and guide candidates along the process. They're wonderful volunteers who do a great job.
Thank you, Kathy. I noticed and again, I haven't been able to look at our chat now, but the questions submitted ahead of time, a lot of these are really questions and resources that our ambassadors provide for you. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about them, and we will include as well in the email how to contact the ambassadors, because they really do help you with that preparation part of it. They have some study groups, they have study tips. They're wonderful resources for people who are looking to sit for the exam. So we encourage you to get connected with, again, I think Kathy has it arranged. Kathy works with them, and Kathy, as well as our vice president of the board as well. I think she failed to mention that at the beginning. So she does a lot of different things for GPCI. But her team of ambassadors are just wonderful resources that help you really wherever you are along the way. They're all connected. I think they do organize themselves around the state or Canada, so that they can help provide resources regionally as well. In your metropolitan areas, that's where it becomes a little bit more challenging. Like the DC region has, I think Tammy doesn't it have like 3 different Grant Professionals Association chapters. So sometimes it's not as clear where you're located, which chapter you might be a part of, for, again, those that have those chapter scholarships as a resource. And that's the primary reason for that. Again, it does not, you do not need to be a member of GPA, a member of a GPA chapter, even though we've talked about them a lot today, that you do not have to be involved in your chapter in order to receive a scholarship, in order to sit for the exam. So they're just people that have additional resources that they give. In the same way, so for example, Kathy had referenced, there's 2 of us on the board, or 1 previous board member and I as well. We have scholarships in memory of our parents. And so we, have certain criteria that we have set up to do that. That is the same way that some regional organizations, chapters have set up those criteria. That's the only reason we ask. You do not need to be a chapter member, and I don't know that that helps you either. It's certainly not in our scholarship process. You can check in with the chapters to see what their criteria might be. And you know what, that's really a good reminder for us on the committee. We're always trying to improve and grow, that maybe that's something we could have as a resource in the future as well.
And there seems to be some confusion about so some of the GPA, Grant Professionals Association chapters offer scholarships, but you do not have to be a member of any GPA chapter to be a member of GPA or any other organization in order to sit for this exam or to apply for the scholarships. And so I've shared the link to the GPA chapter because some of them do have scholarships they operate through their chapters, and so you should ask about that. But this process we're describing for GPCI scholarships is totally separate, and you do not need to be a member of anything.
Yes, and in fact, last year, the majority of people didn't receive scholarships, and they weren't the chapter scholarships. So the majority of scholarships are open to all.
Just a plug for your chapter. If
Yeah.
you are active, in terms of your eligibility packet, you have the opportunity for really grant-specific kinds of continuing education through chapters. opportunities to volunteer, and those are the kinds of things that are part of the eligibility packet. So I'd encourage you to consider that because it's a very great resource. But as you all have said, yeah, it's not required.
Life is hard enough without more requirements, but
Yes.
if you're applying for a chapter scholarship, there's fewer people going for that scholarship specifically. So
There's
the
a
odds,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a question about which are independent and which go through Zoom grants. I think, Jelaine, you're still nailing down who is going to go through Zoom grants at
Right.
this point, right?
Right. So for the ones that for GPCI, we go through Zoom grants for everything that we have. The only way to get the scholarships that go through GPCI are through Zoom grants and through this process. That we do know, we're aware, like Kathy is a part of an organization that has their own independent scholarships as well. So I think we will try to get a better resource together for that. But what I would say is absolutely apply through this process. And then we can also be better about communicating with the chapters we know or the organizations that we know about as well to share some different information and about their processes as well. So as always, it depends. It's always the answer for grants, I feel. So please go through our Zoom grants process. We will share information with those that we know are doing the other ones. But please also just we'll try to get a better resource page, and we'll ask our ambassadors to help with that. But please do ask other sources as well. Ask your employer if they're willing to do partial or if they'll pay for it. And then any of those different associations that you do belong to. We do collaborate not just with Grant Professionals Association. We have some other, we have more and more other organizations as well that we're aware of that do share our information, have ambassadors as well. I don't know that any of them have scholarships, but I should mention as well, we are a part of, if you're a veteran, we do, or active duty probably as well. We are a part of the military resources, so you can use your military benefits in education for the exam. So that is another area that could help you for that.
And I think, Jelaine, it is also now a qualified expense for 529s. Is that
correct? Yes, and that is. We are not financial advisors, but
yes.
So I hesitate to put too many things in, but that is my understanding as well, that they have opened up the 529 eligibility. And so that if you have that personal resource, you would be able to use that for this, for us, for the exam itself.
Jelaine, Judy's asking how long it takes to process an eligibility packet. And what I know is that they're processed by volunteers, and so it's driven by their schedule.
Yes.
But
I think the maximum is a month that we, I think we have 30 days in order to respond. But I will say that's the other challenge, and Tammy alluded to that in the timeline, is please don't wait if you receive a scholarship, please don't wait until the end of August to submit, because sometimes eligibility has to ask you for more things, or they send it back and say, we didn't get this or that. So allow for a little bit more time for that. But typically within 30 days of a complete application to eligibility, you will have your response to that. And they know the scholarship recipients that are coming in. And so we also, of course, we provide that to them so that they're aware of the fact that they'll have more to review in September typically than they would. But they don't, if you apply, you can apply for eligibility before that. So you get your June letter, you have everything ready to go ahead and submit in July, and so you don't have to wait to submit. Early is always fantastic. It's just the deadline to submit is by the end of August. And we will be sending you different reminders and things of those different deadlines if you are a scholarship recipient. I want to make a note here too that make sure you're signing up for our GPCI newsletter. So we have that included here on our question sheet. And please also remember, and I will say this as someone who's been at my current employer for a long time, but am going to be transitioning. I have so many things that are set up with my work email that please give us an email that is your forever email so that if you get a scholarship, but you've changed jobs, then we're trying to reach out to you and remind you, but we might not have the right email. So think about that too when you submit using a forever email so that we can always make sure that you get the notification. If for some reason you do not receive a notification, and these notifications, as far as receiving the scholarship itself, will come from a grant credential email, not from a Zoom grants one. Please do reach out to us at the scholarship email if you have not heard by July 1st if you've received the scholarship or not, because those notifications will go out no later than the end of June for that. There will be some things that come as typical, like that come just telling you from Zoom grants that you have submitted successfully. But the other communication regarding receiving it or not receiving it, those will come from Grant Credential, the scholarships at grantcredential.org. Please also include that one as a safe email for you, as more and more of us have different filters on as well.
There's a question about, do you know the number of scholarships applied for versus awarded, which I know it's competitive.
Yes, thank you for that. So I will say that last year was a typical year, and I believe we had it's typically between 70 and 80 scholarship applications that come in. We'd love to have more because that does help us to try to get more donors as well. Last year, we were able to give full and partial. It was just under 20 scholarships. We are hoping to give more partial scholarships this year. So even though the percentage might not be, don't be discouraged by that, because we are also always seeking out partial scholarships. So we had close to 20 scholarships that were given out. As far as what was a full scholarship and partial, even from last year, I'm not 100% sure where we landed with those numbers. But again, depending on the donor, some of them will give, it's a $629 fee. They might give a $400 scholarship or whatever they have resources for. So even the partial ones are helpful as well. I want to say thank you for those of you that are still with us. I want to make sure that we're very cognizant of the time. So if you do need to leave, we will stay on and answer some questions. But thank you for attending, and thank you for your interest in the GPC and the scholarship program. Use that scholarship email, respond to the email that we send as a follow-up as well. We want to answer those questions that you have and get you positioned well to start April 1st on that application. We hope that you apply for that scholarship if you're eligible to sit for the exam, or if you're doing your CMP this year as well. So thank you for your time, but we will also stay and continue to answer questions as they come in. And you can certainly unmute yourself too, if you prefer to do that. We will go ahead and stop probably the recording as well.